My name is Elena, and I was about to marry Daniel, a rich man from London, Europe, who promised me safety and love. The wedding hall was decorated with soft lights and flowers that cost more than $50,000, paid by my parents with pride. My family stood close to me, especially my sister Clara. She smiled often, but something in her eyes felt cold. Still, I ignored that feeling. I trusted her. I trusted everyone. The music started, guests clapped, and I stepped forward, ready to say yes. Then Clara spoke. She walked to the center and loudly said that I was pregnant and hiding the truth. I felt the ground move under my feet. I denied it, but she showed hospital papers from New York, America, waving them like a weapon. My parents did not ask me anything. They believed her instantly. That moment broke me. The wedding stopped, my name was removed from the family will, and I walked out of that hall alone, with only £300 in my bag and my dignity barely intact. After the wedding collapsed, my life became very small very fast. I moved into a narrow rented room in Manchester, Europe, where the walls were thin and the window faced a brick alley. Every sound felt loud in the silence Daniel left behind. I replayed that day again and again, trying to understand how lies could walk so confidently while truth stayed quiet. I had no lawyer, no family, and no proof. I survived on instant food and the little money I had left, counting every pound and telling myself not to cry. News travels fast in families, especially when shame is involved. Only 2 weeks after my broken wedding, I heard that Daniel was marrying my sister, Clara. The same sister who had stood in front of everyone and destroyed me with a smile. They planned the wedding in Rome, Europe, in a hall near the river. My parents paid for everything again, this time even more proudly. I later heard the wedding cost more than $500,000, with music, food, and guests from both Europe and America. No one asked where I was. No one cared. I tried to distract myself by working small jobs. I cleaned offices, helped in a bakery, and once worked all night packing boxes for £7 an hour. My hands hurt, my back ached, but pain kept my mind busy. At night, I stared at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. Daniel never contacted me. Not once. It was as if I had never existed in his life. A month after the wedding, I saw pictures online. Clara stood next to Daniel in a long white dress, diamonds around her neck, smiling as if she had won a prize. My parents stood beside them, proud and loud. They called her their only daughter, in front of the cameras. That sentence hurt more than any slap. I closed the page and cried until morning. I decided to leave Manchester. Staying there felt like breathing in dust. I used the last of my savings to buy a cheap ticket and moved to Liverpool, Europe, where no one knew my name. I rented a tiny room above a shop. The ceiling leaked when it rained, but it was quiet. I told myself I would rebuild, even if it took years and even if I had to do it alone. One evening, while I was cleaning the shop floor, I received a strange phone call. The number was from America. I almost ignored it, thinking it was a mistake. When I answered, a calm male voice asked if I was Elena. He introduced himself as Mr. Harris, a lawyer who had worked with my grandfather for many years. My heart stopped for a moment. No one had mentioned my grandfather since he passed away. Mr. Harris told me he had been trying to reach me for months. My parents never shared my contact details with him. He asked where I was and if I was safe. No one had asked me that question in a long time. I told him the truth, though my voice shook. He listened quietly and then said he needed to meet me soon. His tone was serious, but kind. We met a week later in London, Europe, in a small office near a busy street. Mr. Harris was an older man with tired eyes and careful words. He told me my grandfather had left clear instructions before his death. He had placed everything in legal protection until certain conditions were met. One of those conditions was that I remain unmarried at the time the accounts were reviewed. Another was that no false medical records be used against me. When he said that, my hands started shaking again. Mr. Harris explained that my grandfather suspected my parents favored Clara too much. He wanted to protect me. He had kept copies of documents, letters, and even hospital confirmations that proved I had never been pregnant. Everything Clara showed at the wedding was fake. Every page was a lie. I felt dizzy. For weeks, I had believed I was powerless. Now I realized the truth had been waiting quietly, just like me. Mr. Harris told me not to contact my family. He said he would handle everything legally and directly. He also told me to prepare myself, because things were about to change very quickly. I nodded, unable to speak. When I left the office, the city felt different. Louder. Brighter. As if the world had shifted slightly in my favor. That night, I slept without crying for the first time since the wedding. I didn't feel happy yet, but I felt something new, steady. I didn't know what would happen to my parents, my sister, or Daniel. But for the first time, I knew one thing clearly. I was no longer invisible. The day everything collapsed for my parents began quietly. I wasn't there to see it with my own eyes, but later I heard every detail, repeated so many times that it felt like I had stood in that house myself. It was the large stone house in Rome, Europe, the one my grandfather had bought decades ago, the house my parents always treated as proof of their success. That morning, my parents were still sleeping comfortably, believing their lives were safe again because Clara had married money. Just after breakfast, a black car stopped in front of the gate. The neighbors watched from their windows as a man stepped out, calm and well-dressed, holding a leather case. It was Mr. Harris. He did not raise his voice or argue. He simply showed legal documents and asked to be let inside. My parents laughed at first. They thought it was a mistake. Clara stood beside Daniel, confident and proud, believing nothing could touch her now. Within an hour, everything changed. Mr. Harris informed them that all of my grandfather's accounts were being closed and transferred. The numbers were not small. There were savings and investments worth several $1 million and pounds, spread across Europe and America. My parents shouted. My mother cried. My father demanded explanations. Mr. Harris calmly explained that the legal owner of every account was me. Then came the cars. 3 luxury vehicles parked in the driveway, together worth more than $900,000. Mr. Harris asked for the keys. When my father refused, the lawyer reminded him that the cars were never his. The keys were taken anyway. One by one, the cars were driven away, leaving empty space where pride used to stand. The house was next. Mr. Harris walked through every room, checking documents, opening drawers, confirming serial numbers. By afternoon, he placed legal seals on the doors. The locks were changed. The house that once echoed with laughter and cruelty was suddenly silent. My parents stood outside, unable to go back in. That was when my father said it. We don't need all this anymore, he declared, forcing his voice to sound strong. Our daughter is enough. He was talking about Clara. For a brief moment, he believed love would replace money. But life did not agree. Clara broke down. She clung to Daniel and began crying uncontrollably. Her makeup ran, her voice shook, and for the first time, she looked scared. Through her tears, she told my parents the truth they had never bothered to ask. Daniel was not what they thought. His father had remarried years ago, and Daniel was only a stepson. Legally, he had no share in his father's inheritance. No companies. No secret accounts. No future fortune. The room went quiet again, but this silence was heavier. My mother collapsed onto the ground, screaming my name. My father covered his face with his hands. Everything they had sacrificed me for was gone. The money. The house. The illusion. Clara's marriage no longer looked like victory. It looked like a trap. Within days, reality became cruel and fast. With no money and no property, my parents had nowhere to go. Daniel moved out, embarrassed and angry, blaming Clara for his own lies. Clara stayed behind, begging my parents not to abandon her. The proud sister who once stood on a wedding stage accusing me was now scrubbing floors and washing dishes in the same house she once ruled, allowed to stay only because the caretaker pitied her. I heard all of this from Mr. Harris during a phone call from Boston, America, where I was staying in the quiet house my grandfather had left for me. He spoke carefully, as if afraid to hurt me, but I felt no shock. Only calm. A strange, deep calm. A week later, my parents came to see me. They arrived with tired faces and trembling hands. They stood outside my door for a long time before knocking. When I opened it, my mother fell to her knees immediately. My father cried openly, something I had never seen before. Clara stood behind them, silent, smaller than I remembered. They begged. They said they were blind. They said they were tricked. They said family should forgive family. They asked me to share the inheritance, even a small part, pound 100,000, $200,000, anything. They promised love, respect, and change. I listened without interrupting. When they finished, I spoke slowly. I told them how it felt to be accused in front of strangers. How it felt to be erased from their will without a question. How it felt to be replaced so easily. I reminded them that they did not lose everything in one day. They chose to lose me long before that. My mother reached for my hand. I stepped back. I told them it was too late. Forgiveness cannot grow in burned ground. Trust does not return because money disappears. I wished them peace, but I closed the door on their demands. As the lock turned, I felt something final settle in my chest. That night, I stood by the window and looked out into the quiet street. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I felt free. For the first time, the house was silent in a good way. Time did not rush after everything ended. It moved slowly, as if even the world needed a pause after so much damage. I stayed in the house near Boston, America, the one my grandfather had quietly prepared for me years ago. It was a calm place with wooden floors, wide windows, and a small garden that caught the morning light. For the first time in my life, I lived without fear of being pushed away. I learned how silence could heal instead of hurt. At first, I kept busy with simple routines. I woke up early, cooked my own meals, and walked through the nearby streets to clear my head. I handled legal matters with Mr. Harris, signing papers and reviewing accounts that held more money than I had ever imagined. There were investments and savings spread across Europe and America, totaling several $1,000,000 and pounds. Still, none of it felt real. What felt real was choosing my own life for the first time. News about my parents reached me slowly. They had moved into a small rented place far from the city center. The proud man who once dismissed me now worked long hours for little pay. My mother tried to contact me often, leaving long voice messages filled with apologies. I listened once, then stopped. Healing did not mean reopening wounds. It meant protecting the quiet I had finally earned. Clara's fall was harder. The sister who once ruled the house now served in it. She cleaned floors, washed clothes, and cooked meals under orders she never thought she would follow. Neighbors whispered. Friends disappeared. Daniel left her within months, unable to handle life without luxury. The marriage that destroyed me did not even last a year. When I heard this, I felt no joy, only a distant sadness for the person she could have been. One afternoon, Mr. Harris visited me again. He brought final documents and the keys to properties that now belonged to me. Among them was the old family house in Rome, Europe. He told me it was fully restored and legally mine. I held the keys in my hand for a long time, feeling their weight. That house held pain, but it also held truth. I decided to sell it. Some places are not meant to be returned to. The sale brought more money than expected, over $2 million, which I used carefully. I paid my taxes, set aside savings, and donated a portion to women's shelters in Europe and America. I knew what it felt like to be abandoned, to have nowhere safe to stand. If my past had taught me anything, it was that security should never depend on someone else's approval. Months passed. I changed my hair, my clothes, and my habits. I took courses, learned about business, and slowly built confidence that did not come from family or marriage. I met people who knew nothing about my past, and for once, I was not the daughter or the sister. I was just Elena. Evening, as autumn arrived, my parents came again. They did not knock this time. They waited by the gate. My father looked older than his years. My mother held a small bag, as if ready to leave at any moment. Clara was not with them. I stepped outside but kept the gate between us. They asked for forgiveness again. Not money this time, just a place in my life. I told them the truth gently. I said forgiveness was not something I could give just because time had passed. I said love without trust is empty. I wished them well, but I chose distance. Sometimes, survival means saying no without anger. They left quietly. As the gate closed, I felt no regret. That night, I sat alone in my living room, holding my grandfather's old watch, the only thing I had kept from the past. I understood his wisdom at last. He did not leave me money to make me rich. He left it to make me free. I looked around my house, my life, my future. The story did not end with revenge or romance. It ended with strength. And for the first time, that was enough.